In the endless black of space, a strange signal traveled through the darkness. Unlike the usual cosmic noises that fill the universe, this one had a pattern. It moved with purpose, carrying a message across thousands of light years until it reached Earth. At first, nobody paid much attention to it. The scientists at Global Space Monitoring Station dismissed it as just another space anomaly. They had seen plenty of those before, random bursts of energy or radiation that meant nothing. But Dr. Ju Kim wasn't convinced. Ju sat alone in her office late one night, staring at the data scrolling across her screen. Others had gone home hours ago, but something about this signal kept her glued to her desk. The mathematical sequence repeated in a way that seemed almost deliberate. "That's not possible," she whispered to herself, pushing her dark hair away from her face. Yet the more she studied it, the more certain she became. The next morning, Ju walked into the weekly staff meeting with dark circles under her eyes but excitement in her step. She hadn't slept at all. "I need to show you something," she said, interrupting Director Taeyong before he could begin the usual updates. The room fell silent as she connected her tablet to the main display screen. "This signal we detected 3 days ago isn't just random space noise," she explained, pointing to the pattern highlighted in her analysis. "See how it repeats. It uses prime numbers as markers. Then it shifts to mathematical constants, pi, the golden ratio, the square root of 2. Director Taeyong frowned. "What exactly are you suggesting, Dr. Kim?" "I'm suggesting that this is a message," Ju said firmly. "A distress call, to be specific." Laughter broke out around the table. Dr. Hyunwoo, the senior astrophysicist, shook his head. "Ju, I know you're still new here, but we get excited about signals all the time. They always turn out to be nothing." "Not like this," Ju insisted. She tapped her screen again, bringing up more data. "I've ruled out every natural phenomenon. This uses universal constants that any advanced civilization would recognize." "And where is this supposed message coming from?" asked Director Taeyong, his voice heavy with doubt. Ju took a deep breath. "It's coming from a star system near the edge of our galaxy, approximately 30,000 light-years from Earth." The room fell completely silent. "That's impossible," said Dr. Mincio from the corner. "Our best detection equipment can't pick up artificial signals from more than a few hundred light-years away." "Exactly," said Ju. "Whatever sent this signal has technology far more advanced than ours. The power needed to broadcast something we could detect from that distance is enormous." For the next week, Ju fought to convince her colleagues. Most dismissed her theory, but a few began to take interest. They ran tests, analyzed the data from different angles, and tried to prove her wrong. They couldn't. 1 month after the signal's discovery, Ju found herself in Washington, D.C., presenting her findings to a special committee of scientists, military officials, and government representatives. "The signal repeats every 47 minutes, she explained, standing before them in the windowless conference room. "It contains what we believe are spatial coordinates, though we're still working to decode the full message." "And you're absolutely certain this is artificial?" asked a stern-faced general. "Yes, sir," Ju replied. "The probability of this occurring naturally is effectively 0. A woman in a dark suit leaned forward. "Dr. Kim, if what you're saying is true, this would be the first confirmed contact with an extraterrestrial intelligence in human history." "I'm aware of the implications," Ju said quietly. "What do they want?" asked someone else. Ju hesitated. "Based on the repeating pattern and intensity variations, we believe it's a distress call. Something or someone is asking for help." The room erupted in overlapping questions. Ju raised her voice to be heard over them. "We need to decide if we're going to respond," she said firmly. "Whatever sent this signal is 30,000 light-years away. That's far beyond our reach with current technology. But they reached out to us. They must have a reason to think we could help." The debate that followed lasted for days, then weeks. World leaders were briefed. Scientists from other countries were brought in to verify Juwoo's findings. Some argued that responding was too risky. What if it was a trap? Others believed it was humanity's moral duty to at least acknowledge the call. Throughout it all, Juwoo continued her work, trying to extract more information from the signal. Late one night, as she sat alone in her lab, she made another breakthrough. The signal isn't just coming from that location, she realized as she studied the new data. It's moving. Whatever sent it is traveling through space, and quickly. Juwoo immediately called Director Taeyeon, who had become one of her strongest supporters. If they're moving at that speed, they could reach our solar system within 50 years, she told him, her voice shaking slightly. Director, I don't think this is just a general distress call. I think they're coming to us. The next day, as Juwoo prepared to present her latest findings to the International Committee, an assistant burst into the room. Dr. Kim, come quickly. There's something you need to see. Juwoo followed him to the monitoring center, where dozens of scientists were gathered around screens displaying new data. The signal changed 20 minutes ago, explained Dr. Minseo. It's broadcasting on multiple frequencies now, and there's something else embedded in it. On the main screen, a series of simple images appeared, geometric shapes, then what looked like star maps, and finally, unmistakably, the outline of humanoid figures. They're telling us what they look like, Juwoo whispered, or what they want us to think they look like. As the images continued to stream in, a chill ran down Juwoo's spine. The distress call was getting stronger. Whatever was out there, whatever was coming toward Earth, was getting closer, and they were running out of time to decide how to respond. While the world's leaders argued about the alien signal, a small group of men and women gathered in a secret base deep under the ice of Antarctica. The base wasn't on any map. No satellite could see it. Only a handful of people in each generation knew it existed. General Do-hyun Park stood at the center of the command room, his weathered face lit by the blue glow of computer screens. At 62 years old, he had spent 40 years guarding humanity's greatest secret. Now, for the first time, that secret would be revealed. The signal is genuine, Do-hyun said to the 12 people seated around the circular table. All wore the same plain black uniforms with no rank or insignia. We must activate the Vanguard. A woman with silver-streaked hair, Colonel Sunhee, shook her head. Are we certain, General? Once we open the chamber, there's no going back. I'm certain, Do-hyun replied. This is exactly the scenario our ancestors prepared for, a threat from beyond the stars. He pressed his palm against a scanner hidden in the wall. A section of the floor slid open, revealing a staircase that spiraled down into darkness. One by one, they descended. The stairs led to an enormous cavern carved from the Antarctic bedrock. The air here was different, warmer, with a faint smell like ozone. The walls glowed with strange symbols no modern human language could translate. At the far end of the cavern stood a massive door made of a dark metal that seemed to absorb light. No handle, no control panel, just a smooth surface marked with the same odd symbols. 5,000 years, whispered Do-hyun. That's how long this door has remained sealed. He removed a small wooden box from his pocket. Inside lay 12 vials of blood, samples taken from 12 unsuspecting civilians around the world. The bloodlines have remained pure, he said, just as we swore to maintain. Do-hyun approached the door and pressed his hand against its center. Nothing happened at first. Then he took the first vial and emptied the blood onto the metal surface. The effect was immediate. The blood didn't drip down but spread out in perfect lines, filling invisible grooves in the metal. The symbols began to glow with a soft golden light. Do-hyun emptied the second vial, then the third, until all 12 samples had been absorbed by the door. With a deep rumbling sound, the door began to open. It recognizes the genetic markers, Sunhee whispered. After all this time. Behind the door lay a vast chamber bathed in soft blue light, and floating in special containers filled with clear liquid were 12 enormous humanoid forms. Each stood at least 15 meters tall, their metallic skin reflecting the blue glow. They weren't robots, nor were they entirely biological. They were something in between, living machines created with technology far beyond modern understanding. The Vanguard, Do-hyun said with reverence. Humanity's hidden guardians. According to the ancient records passed down through generations of keepers, these giants had been created by early humans who possessed knowledge and technology that was eventually lost. They had foreseen a time when Earth would face a threat from beyond the stars, a threat that ordinary humans couldn't fight alone. Now we must find the keys, Do-hyun said. The keys weren't objects but people, 12 specific individuals who carried within their DNA the ability to connect with and control the giants. The keepers had tracked these bloodlines for millennia, ensuring they continued unbroken through the generations. Halfway across the world, Jin-Woo Lee was having a normal day. The 28-year-old worked as a mechanic in Busan, fixing cars in his family's small garage. He had no idea that his blood sample, taken during a routine medical checkup last year, had been secretly analyzed by Do-hyun's people. As Jin-Woo closed the garage for the night, his phone rang. The caller ID showed an unknown number. "Hello," he answered cautiously. "Mr. Lee," said a woman's voice. "This is Dr. Yoonji Choi from Seoul National University Hospital. We need you to come in immediately regarding some test results." "Test results? Is something wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," Dr. Choi assured him. "But it's urgent. A car is on its way to pick you up now." Before Jin-Woo could protest, a black car pulled up outside the garage. Two men in suits stepped out. Similar scenes played out across the globe. In Rio de Janeiro, teacher Subin Kang was approached while shopping. In Toronto, chef Dongbu Yoon received a similar phone call. In Cairo, engineer Minji Park was visited at her office. None of them knew each other. None of them understood why they were being taken. Within 24 hours, all 12 had been transported to Antarctica by special military flights. They were confused, frightened, and demanding answers. Do-hyun gathered them in a briefing room near the surface level of the base. "I apologize for bringing you here this way," he began. "But what I'm about to show you couldn't be explained over the phone." He told them about the signal, about the ancient chamber beneath the ice, and about their unique genetic heritage. "You're saying we're what? Some kind of chosen ones?" asked Hyunjin Kwan, a young woman from London. "In a manner of speaking," Do-hyun replied. "Your ancestors were the original pilots of the Vanguard. That genetic link has been preserved in your DNA." "This is crazy," said Jin-Woo. "I fix cars for a living. I'm nobody special." Do-hyun looked at him steadily. "That's why you were chosen, Mr. Lee. The original pilots were ordinary people who rose to an extraordinary challenge." He led the 12 down to the chamber. When they saw the giants, floating silently in their containers, most were struck speechless. "Each of you is linked to one specific unit," Do-hyun explained. "When you connect with it, the neural interface will activate. You'll be able to control it with your thoughts." "And if we refuse?" asked Subin, her voice shaking slightly. "Then humanity faces this threat alone," Do-hyun said simply. "The choice is yours. But know that these beings were created to respond only to you. Without you, they remain dormant." Jin-Woo stepped forward first. Something about the giant in the far corner called to him. He approached its container and placed his hand against the clear surface. The giant's eyes opened, glowing blue orbs that fixed on Jin-Woo's face. Everyone gasped. The connection was instant and overwhelming. Jin-Woo felt the giant's consciousness touch his own, not alien or mechanical, but somehow familiar, like remembering a dream. "I can feel it," Jin-Woo whispered. "It knows me." One by one, the others approached their giants. As each connection formed, lights throughout the chamber brightened. Systems dormant for millennia hummed to life. The Vanguard was awakening. And not a moment too soon. For 3 days, the 12 pilots trained with their giants beneath the Antarctic ice. Each person learned at their own pace. Some struggled with the neural connection, finding it hard to control such massive bodies with just their thoughts. Others took to it quickly, as if they had done it before. Minji Kang mastered the connection faster than anyone. The 30-year-old structural engineer from Seoul had always had a knack for understanding how things fit together. Buildings, bridges, and now, apparently, ancient biomechanical giants. "It's not as hard as it looks," she told the others during a break in training. They sat together in the base's cafeteria, exhausted but excited. "Don't think of it as controlling something separate from you. Think of it as extending yourself. Like the giant is just a bigger version of your own body." "Easy for you to say," grumbled Jinwoo, rubbing his temples. "I still can't make mine walk without crashing into walls." Minji smiled sympathetically. "You'll get it. I think our minds just work differently. I build things for a living. Understanding structure and movement comes naturally to me." Her giant, codenamed Taijo after an ancient Korean king, responded to her thoughts with perfect precision. When she wanted it to move, it moved exactly as she imagined. The neural link felt right, somehow familiar. "It feels like remembering rather than learning," she tried to explain to General Doyen during an evaluation. "Like I'd done this before, and I'm just recalling how it works." Doyen nodded. "According to the ancient texts, that's exactly what's happening. Your ancestors' memories are encoded in your DNA. Not conscious memories, but muscle memory, instinct." On the fourth day, they received word that the alien signal had changed. It was now broadcasting images of destruction, crystal ships breaking apart, shadow creatures consuming everything in their path. "They're under attack," Doyen announced grimly. "It's time. Ready or not, the Vanguard must answer." That evening, the ice shelf above the secret base began to crack. Enormous pieces broke away, creating a channel to the open ocean. One by one, the 12 giants rose from the waters of Antarctica. They didn't look like robots or machines. Their bodies flowed like liquid metal, changing shape slightly with each movement. Each stood over 15 meters tall, with smooth, featureless faces that reflected the sunset like mirrors. No two were exactly alike. Some were broader, some more slender, each seemingly designed to complement its pilot's natural thinking style. Inside each giant, the human pilot sat within a spherical chamber filled with a clear gel that supported their body and strengthened the neural connection. They didn't control the giants with buttons or levers, but with their thoughts alone. "All units report status," came Do-hyun's voice through their communication system. "Taijo ready," Minji responded immediately. One by one, the others confirmed their status. "Good," said Do-hyun. "Now, prepare for space transition." This was the part they had only been told about, never practiced. According to the ancient knowledge passed down to Do-hyun, the Vanguard units could travel through space by folding the fabric of reality itself. "Clear your minds," instructed Do-hyun. "Focus only on the coordinates we provided. Your giants know what to do." Minji closed her eyes and pictured the numbers in her mind, the source of the distress signal, 30,000 light-years away. She felt Taijo respond, its entire body vibrating at a frequency she could feel but not hear. The air around the 12 giants began to shimmer, light bent around them in impossible ways. Then, in a flash, the temporarily blinded satellites passing overhead, they'd vanished from Earth. Minji felt a sensation like being stretched and compressed at the same time. Colors she had no names for rushed past her consciousness. Then, suddenly, stillness. She opened her eyes and gasped. Through Taijo's sensory systems, she could see they were no longer on Earth. The 12 Vanguard units floated in deep space, surrounded by stars that formed unfamiliar patterns. Did we just travel 30,000 light-years in seconds? Jinwoo's voice came through the communication system, shaky with awe. Before anyone could answer, they saw it, a battle raging around a small blue-green planet. A fleet of ships made of what looked like crystal were trying to defend the planet from strange, shadowy entities that seemed to swallow light. The crystal ships were beautiful, delicate-looking structures that sparkled like diamonds in the starlight. But they were clearly losing the fight. As the Vanguard watched, one of the crystal vessels broke apart, shattered by a formless black mass. "Those are the ones who sent the signal," said Do-Yun through the comms. "And they're about to be destroyed." Minji didn't wait for orders. Taejo moved forward, propelled by her instinct to protect. The other giants followed her lead. As they approached the battle, Minji could see the shadow creatures more clearly. They had no fixed shape. They flowed like oil and water, constantly changing form. Sometimes they looked almost like enormous squids, with tentacles of darkness reaching out to crush the crystal ships. Other times, they seemed more like clouds of black smoke with glowing points that might have been eyes. One of the shadow entities noticed the approaching giants and broke away from the main group. It rushed toward them, growing larger as it came. "Evasive action," shouted someone over the comms. "Hyunjin," Minji thought. The 12 giants scattered, moving with surprising grace for such large beings. The shadow creature seemed confused, pausing its charge. "How do we fight these things?" Jinwoo asked, panic edging his voice. Minji felt something stir in her mind, not her own thought, but knowledge from Taejo itself. "The giants know," she said. "Let them guide you." She relaxed her conscious control, allowing Taejo's ancient programming to surface. Her giant raised its arms, and energy began to gather between its hands, a swirling ball of blue-white light. The other giants did the same, each generating similar energy in different colors. When the shadow creature charged again, all 12 released their energy at once. The combined beams struck the entity. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the shadow began to dissolve, breaking apart like smoke in a strong wind. The crystal ships noticed their new allies. One broke away from the main fleet and approached the Vanguard. It was smaller than the giants, but intricately designed, its surface covered in what looked like writing or symbols. A voice filled Minji's mind, not through the communication system, but directly into her thoughts. "You answered our call," it said, in words that somehow translated themselves. "We had almost lost hope." "We're from Earth," Minji responded, allowing Taejo to transmit her thoughts. "We received your distress signal." "Earth," the voice repeated. "Yes, the home of the sleeping guardians." The ancient texts spoke truly then. Before Minji could ask what that meant, more shadow entities broke away from the main battle and headed toward them. "There will be time for explanations later," said the voice. "For now, we must fight." The shadow creatures moved like a single mind, abandoning their attack on the crystal ships to focus entirely on the 12 giants from Earth. They spread out in a wide arc, surrounding the Vanguard. "They recognize us," said Minji, feeling Taejo's knowledge flowing through her mind. "They know what the Vanguard is." The shadow entities began to pulse with dark energy. The space around them warped and twisted as if being pulled by invisible hands. "Brace yourselves," shouted Chunho Lee from his giant, Orang. The former high school teacher had been visiting his sister in Australia when he was brought to Antarctica. Now he floated in the depths of space, about to face an enemy no human had ever encountered. The attack hit them like a physical wave. Minji felt Taejo's structure strain against forces trying to crush it from all directions. Through their shared neural link, she could feel pain, not her own human pain, but Taejo's sense that its body was being compressed beyond safe limits. "They're using gravitational distortion," Juno called out, his voice tight with concentration. "They're trying to collapse our structural integrity." Everyone, counter with inverse field projection. Minji had no idea what inverse field projection meant, but Taejo did. She let the giant's ancient knowledge guide her, feeling rather than thinking about the response. Taejo's body began to glow with a blue-white light that pushed outward against the crushing forces. All around her, the other giants did the same, each glowing with slightly different colors. Orang with red, Jinwoo's giant with green, others with purple, gold, or orange. Together, their energies formed a rainbow barrier against the shadow attack. The pressure eased. Minji took a deep breath, feeling Tajo's systems stabilize. "How did you know what to do?" she asked Tuno through the comlink. "I didn't," he admitted. "The words just came to me. Like I've done this before." The largest crystal ship approached them, moving gracefully through the battle zone. Its surface sparkled with internal lights that pulsed in complex patterns. "Defenders from Earth," came a voice in all their minds simultaneously. "We are the Lumina. We have waited centuries for your arrival." "You knew we were coming?" asked Kunjin, her surprise evident in her voice. "It was written in the ancient records," the Lumina voice replied. "When the Shadow Eaters returned, the Guardians of Earth would awaken." Before any of the humans could ask more questions, the shadow entities attacked again. This time they split into smaller forms, hundreds of dart-like projectiles that moved faster than the eye could track. "Scatter," ordered Juno. The giants broke formation just as the shadow darts reached them. Minji pushed Taijo into a spinning dodge, but several darts still struck its left shoulder. On impact, they spread like ink on paper, covering part of Taijo's surface with darkness. Wherever they touched, the giant's metal skin began to dull and weaken. "They're trying to infect us," Minji realized with horror. She could feel the shadow substance attempting to penetrate Taijo's outer layer. Across the battlefield, other giants faced the same problem. Jinwoo's giant had dark patches spreading across its chest. Hunjin's was almost half covered. Only Junho's Huarang seemed able to repel the infection completely. "Chunho, how are you keeping them off?" Minji called urgently. "It's the energy signature," he replied. "Huarang is vibrating at a frequency they can't attach to. Try adjusting your output to match mine." Minji focused, feeling for the specific pattern Shunho's giant was generating. Taijo understood instantly and began to change its energy field, vibrating faster, creating a high-pitched hum that Minji could feel in her bones. The shadow substance on Taijo's shoulder began to break apart, dissolving into space. One by one, the other pilots copied the technique, their giants shaking off the infectious darkness. The Lumina ships took advantage of the moment, moving in to attack while the shadow entities were disoriented. Beams of crystal light cut through space, slicing through the larger shadow forms. For a brief moment, Minji thought they might be winning. Then, from the darkness of space behind them, a new threat appeared. It was enormous, a shadow entity many times larger than the others. It moved slowly, purposefully, like a massive predator that knows its prey cannot escape. Its shape resembled a giant hand with too many fingers, each one longer than an entire Vanguard giant. "That must be their leader," said Jinwoo, fear evident in his voice. The giant shadow reached out one finger-like appendage. A beam of pure darkness shot forth, striking one of the Lumina ships. The beautiful crystal vessel didn't break or shatter. It simply ceased to exist, leaving not even debris behind. "It's consuming matter completely," gasped Minji, converting it directly to energy. The remaining Lumina ships pulled back, clearly terrified of the new arrival. The 12 giants of the Vanguard now stood alone against the approaching monster. "We need to combine our attacks," said Minji, an idea forming in her mind. "The harmonic frequency that disrupts the smaller shadows. If we all generate it together, but at different pitches." "A chord," said Juno, understanding immediately. "A harmonic chord across multiple frequencies." "Exactly. Like musical notes played together." The pilots worked quickly, each giant adjusting its energy output to create a specific note in the chord. Minji coordinated them, using her engineer's precision to ensure each frequency was exactly right. "On my mark," she said, feeling Taijo gather energy for the attack. 3, 2, 1, now. All 12 giants released their energy at once. The beams didn't just strike the massive shadow. They surrounded it, creating a cage of light that vibrated with their combined frequencies. The shadow entity writhed within the energy field. Its shape distorted, stretching and compressing as if it couldn't maintain its form. A high-pitched keening sound filled their communication systems, so loud that several pilots cried out in pain. "It's working," shouted Jinwoo. "Keep it up." The shadow began to break apart, pieces of darkness dissolving into the vacuum of space. But as it disintegrated, it lashed out one final time. A pulse of gravitational energy erupted from its core, striking Minji's giant with devastating force. Taizhou tumbled backward, systems failing across its body. Minji felt the neural connection waver, her mind slipping away from the giants. Through fading awareness, she saw the massive shadow collapse in on itself, contracting to a single point before vanishing entirely. Then darkness took her. When Minji opened her eyes, she was looking up at a ceiling made of crystal. Light played across its surface in patterns that seemed almost like writing. "You're awake," said a soft voice beside her. She turned to see a being unlike any she had imagined, humanoid but clearly not human, with skin that looked like polished opal and eyes that shimmered with inner light. "I'm on your ship," Minji realized. "A Lumina ship." The being nodded. "Your guardian was damaged in the battle. We brought you here for healing." "Did we win?" "For now," said the Lumina. "Thanks to you and the other Earth Guardians, the Shadow Eaters have retreated. But they will return. They always do." Minji sat up slowly, feeling strange to be in her own body after so many hours linked with Taizhou. "You knew about us. About the Vanguard. How?" The Lumina's expression was unreadable, but something in its posture suggested sadness. "That," it said, "is a very long story." 3 days after the battle, the 12 pilots gathered in a large crystal chamber aboard the main Lumina ship. Their giants stood outside in space, helping the Lumina repair their damaged vessels. Through their neural links, the humans could still feel what their giants felt, see what they saw, even while separated from them. Minji sat beside Jinwoo and Juno, watching as a group of Lumina entered the chamber. Unlike the others they had met, these Lumina wore elaborate crystal garments that caught the light and broke it into rainbows. The tallest among them stepped forward, clearly a leader of some kind. "I am Elder Luminara," the tall being said, its thoughts flowing directly into their minds. "On behalf of all Lumina, I thank you for answering our call." "You knew the Vanguard would respond," said Minji. "It wasn't a question." The elder nodded, its opal-like skin shifting colors with the movement. "We have carried the knowledge for thousands of years. It was passed to us by those who came before." "Those who came before?" Junho leaned forward. "You mean the ones who created the Vanguard?" "Yes." Elder Luminara gestured, and the walls of the chamber lit up with images, star maps, ancient ships, beings that looked almost human but not quite. Long ago, there was a great civilization that spanned many stars. They were explorers and builders. They seeded life on countless worlds, including Earth. "Are you saying humans were created?" asked Hyunjin, her voice shaking slightly. "Not created," the elder corrected gently. "Guided. Your ancestors had potential that was nurtured and shaped. But the essence of humanity has always been your own." The images on the wall changed, showing shadow creatures like the ones they had fought. Then the darkness came. The Void Heralds, harbingers of something far worse. "Worse than those things we fought." Jinwoo sounded doubtful. "The Heralds are merely scouts," said Luminara gravely. "They prepare the way for the Void itself, a force that consumes all life, all energy, all matter in its path." The wall now showed entire solar systems being swallowed by darkness, stars winking out one by one. "The Ancient Ones fought back," continued Luminara. "They created weapons and guardians, like your Vanguard, to stand against the Void. For a time, they succeeded in pushing it back beyond the rim of the galaxy." "But it's returning now," said Minji, understanding dawning on her. The elder nodded. "It has been creeping back for centuries. We Lumina are cartographers. We map the stars and monitor the movements of all things in the galaxy. We have watched the darkness spreading once more." Juno frowned. "If you knew this was happening, Why wait until now to call for help? We sent the signal as a test, explained Lumina. Our records indicated that Earth harbored guardians of immense power, but we needed confirmation. We needed to know if the Vanguard still functioned, if the bloodlines had been preserved. So the distress call wasn't real? Asked Jinwoo. Oh, it was very real, said the elder sadly. The attack you witnessed was genuine, but we chose that moment to call for aid because we needed to be certain of your capabilities before the real war begins. The 12 humans exchanged troubled looks. They had been ordinary people just days ago. A mechanic, an engineer, a teacher, and 9 others with normal lives. Now they were being told they were part of an ancient plan to save the galaxy. There's more, said Lumina. Your Vanguard giants are powerful, but they are only the first line of defense. The ancient ones left other gifts on Earth. Technology, knowledge, power sources that have remained dormant for millennia. General Doyan never mentioned any of this, said Minji. Your keepers only knew what they needed to know, the elder replied. The full truth was too dangerous to preserve in conscious memory. But it exists within the Vanguard itself, and within your DNA. Minji closed her eyes, reaching out through her neural link to Taijo. Immediately, she felt a flood of images and information, ancient battles, star maps, strange technologies, and something else, something about Earth itself. Earth is a key, she whispered, opening her eyes. The ancient ones did something to the planet. They hid something there. Lumina nodded. The final weapon against the void. But it can only be activated by humanity as a whole, once they have awakened to their true heritage. You expect us to go back and tell everyone they're actually part of some ancient alien plan. Chunho laughed without humor. They'll think we're crazy. They will believe when they see the Vanguard, said Lumina, when they feel the call awakening in their own blood. The elder approached Minji and placed a cool, crystalline hand on her shoulder. Your people were positioned as sentinels at the edge of known space, your true potential hidden even from yourselves until you were needed. Now you are needed. Minji stood and walked to the chamber's window. Outside, the stars shone against the blackness of space. Somewhere out there, beyond the rim of the galaxy, something ancient and hungry was moving toward them. And somehow, humanity was meant to stop it. We're not just answering a distress call, she said quietly. We're being called to war. Later, as they prepared to return to Earth, the 12 pilots gathered one last time. Their giants had been repaired, their strength restored. The Lumina fleet would accompany them. 36 crystal ships carrying representatives who would help explain the situation to Earth's leaders. Do you think they'll believe us? Asked Jinwoo as they prepared to enter their giants. They'll have to, replied Minji. The shadow creatures weren't just attacking the Lumina. They were heading somewhere specific. Earth, said Juno grimly. Minji nodded. The void knows about the weapon hidden there. It's coming to destroy it, and us, before we can wake up and use it. Outside, the Vanguard giants formed a protective formation around the Lumina fleet. Minji settled into Taijo's control chamber, feeling the familiar neural link reconnect. All units ready, she said through the communication system. Course set for Earth, confirmed Juno. As the combined fleet prepared to fold space for the journey home, Minji thought about what awaited them. They would have to convince a planet of scared, confused people that they were part of something greater than they had ever imagined. They would have to awaken powers dormant in the human race for thousands of years. And they had to do it before the darkness reached Earth. The space around them shimmered as the fold began. The stars stretched into lines of light, and then they were moving, racing back to a home planet that would never be the same again. The end.